Welcome everyone who's joining. We're going to start right away. I know we're getting some numbers still coming in, but we have a 1 hour with our assistant secretary, so we want to use every moment we can as we go forward. So,
okay, time to kick off. Good afternoon and welcome to the first policy forum of the Coalition for Career Development Center in the 2022-23 year. Thank you to our sponsors who made this possible, American Student Assistance and the Education Strategies Group. I'm Ava Mitchell, the Chief Program Officer at the Coalition, and I am thrilled to introduce today's topic, Building Equity into the Talent Pipeline, Innovative Strategies to Support Career and Workforce Readiness for Individuals with Disabilities. It is the mission of the Coalition to make career development for all students the #1 priority of American education. That cannot be accomplished unless policies and practices ensure all students have quality career readiness programming and support. To promote equity, we must provide access to academic and career planning, work-based learning opportunities, career development technology, and qualified staff that understand the diverse needs of people facing unique challenges. This panel will discuss current efforts to ensure career readiness and access specifically for people with disabilities. First, I would like to welcome one of our Coalition's distinguished board members, Amanda Winters, the Post-Secondary Director of the National Governors Association's Best Practices Center. She will be reflecting on the panelists' remarks to conclude today's policy forum. Acting as panel moderator, I would also like to welcome Dr. Scott Solberg, our Coalition's Vice President of Research Initiatives. Dr. Solberg is a highly recognized global expert on career development and future readiness with deep knowledge of implementation across the United States. He is also the director of the Boston University Center for Future Readiness and a professor of counseling psychology and applied human development at the BU Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. And Dr. Solberg will have the privilege of introducing our very special guests who are all in strategic positions to ensure career readiness access specifically for people with disabilities. Handing it over to you, Dr. Solberg.
all right, thank you, Ava. Very, very exciting. We have, I'm going to introduce our assistant secretary in just a moment. We also will have Laura Owens and Lori Cooney talking about some really exciting implementation practices in this space. But I just wanted to say how excited and a bit nervous to have this privilege of welcoming our Honorable Taryn Mackenzie Williams, our Assistant Secretary of Labor for Disability Employment Policy, and bringing you into our CCD Center Policy Forum. So Taryn, this is just, it's really great. It's wonderful to have you speak with us today. In your position, you're advising a whole bunch of range of things, especially ODEP, right? The Office of Disability Employment Policy. But it's just great to have a federal level of all the different ways in which we can get our employers and governments working, hopefully in a collaborative way, right? Around the evidence-based policies and practices, with the end game being employment and really future mobility for our individuals with disabilities. So I've known you for many years. In fact, when you first began at ODEP, we were working together. We don't want to use the number of years. Let's not do that. It's been a long time. And I just want everyone to know that we honestly cannot have a more passionate and strong advocate at the federal level for supporting the workforce development of individuals with disabilities. So thank you, Assistant Secretary, for taking the time. I have to practice saying these words. They're so new to me, but it's great. Thank you. So we're gonna, are you on mute still? You're on mute. There we go.
Here I am, yes. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I was smiling and chuckling. Absolutely, we will not use numbers to refer to all of the experience that we had working together. But I appreciate that you shared how passionate I am about this topic, because if I leave you with anything, it would be that issues related to the transition of youth and young adults with disabilities really feel my passion for this work. And it's why I am actually in this office today. So thank you for the introduction. Mm-hmm. I will also say it's incredibly rewarding to be back here at ODEP, and I'm really looking forward to the panel.
All right. Well, you know, the neat part about having a policy forum is we get to just make it a conversation, which I think is more engaging and spontaneous. And so, but I wanted to first just hear how it's going, right? How's your experience been as the Assistant Secretary of Labor?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a little bit of a whirlwind. I have now been in the role for about 14 months. We're coming up on maybe 15 months, and actually just finished October, which for us is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So I'm fresh off of a month-long really recognition and celebration of the contributions that individuals with disabilities make to not only our workforce, but really to our entire country. So I'm excited, and I bring that excitement with me every day. I will tell you a little bit about ODEP. I feel like sometimes at the federal level, we get stuck in acronym speak, and it's like, so what is that? And ODEP is a small non-regulatory agency within the Department of Labor. We report directly to the secretary, someone who's very familiar to folks in Boston, Secretary Marty Walsh, or former Mayor Marty Walsh. And we were created by Congress a little more than 20 years ago, about 20 and a half, to bring a particular focus across programs, policies, and agencies around advancing disability employment. It is our goal and our mission to not only increase the number of people with disabilities in jobs, but also the quality of the jobs held by people with disabilities across the country. And because we're a small agency, there are about 60 of us. I'm privileged enough to work alongside really talented subject matter experts on a whole range of issues, but there are only 60 of us. And so much of our work is done in partnership and in collaboration. We work across the Department of Labor and all of its agencies. We work across the broader federal government and all of the agencies whose regulatory or enforcement work or the programs that they invest in some way impacts people with disabilities and their employment. And then we work with state and local government as well, ensuring that the policies that we are developing and influencing at the national level are also being enacted or adopted at the state and local level as well. So I'm lucky enough to spend much of my day talking to partners of ours and talking about people with disabilities and the unique opportunity that we have right now to ensure that they are a part of our economic recovery. So that's a long way of saying it's going well, but there's a lot of work to do.
That's great. And want to encourage those that are listening. So excited you're all here. Use the Q&A area there to if you've got some questions for our Assistant Secretary that you'd like to make sure we try to get to. We'll be pushing those in. We have Robin Koyer-Kubicek from our team that'll be monitoring and punching in to say, hey, hold on, gang, here's a great question. So please, let's make it a conversation. And then after we're finished, after the first hour, we'll be able to stay on. So if you're not feeling like we're getting questions answered, we'll be able to do that. We have just 1 hour with our Assistant Secretary, but we'll be able to stay on for another 30 minutes. So what can you share with us around some of the exciting developments? You know, what are some things that you're looking at the federal level and seeing
Sure.
things happening around the states? What are some things that are popping up that you really think we need to be looking at?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I'll talk a little bit about what our priorities are as an agency and how we think of our work in advancing the goals of the Biden-Harris administration. I would say foremost, I sort of segued away from it earlier, is that we want to ensure that we are building an inclusive recovery. And it's hard to go around today and not hear people talking about the economic recovery. And for us, a successful economic recovery is one that includes people with disabilities. We know from data that people with disabilities did experience a lot of job loss during the pandemic. And that was in part because of the sectors that they occupied. And as we see new investments made possible by legislation like the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, or the Inflation Reduction Act, we want to make sure that those new opportunities and that will lead to new jobs include jobs for people with disabilities. We also want to make sure, as we think about an inclusive recovery, because this is something employers are talking about all across the globe, we want to ensure that what we've learned over the last few years, particularly with the transformation and how we connect as workers, how we connect as frankly colleagues and family members, the transformation in our digital infrastructure, that leads to more opportunities for people with disabilities, and that we're not with an unintended consequence, maybe disenfranchising people with disabilities even further as we advance new policies. We are also focused very much on equity. It's certainly one of the earliest steps of the administration was to issue executive orders, including one focused on what we call DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I spent a lot of my time talking about the A and what it truly means to have accessibility as we are building the workforce of the future, and as we are crafting and shaping workplace culture and the policies that we leverage to recruit, hire, retain, and advance talent. A third priority that we're very much focused on is advancing competitive integrated employment. For us, you hear Secretary Walsh and Deputy Secretary Sue talk about this all the time. We are focused on good jobs. And for us, a good job is one that's defined as making competitive wages. And for us in disability community, we want good jobs at competitive wages where people have the opportunities to work alongside their non-disabled peers. So competitive integrated employment. And that is a key part of the president's platform to advance competitive integrated employment and to phase out the continued payment of sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities. But it's really the fourth priority that I would highlight. It's one that is near and dear to my heart, and that is advancing transition and improved transition outcomes for youth and young adults with disabilities. As you indicated, our office recognizes how important it is to develop career pathways for youth and young adults with disabilities. We've always taken a holistic approach to improving post-secondary education and employment outcomes for youth and young adults with disabilities. And we really have an opportunity to build on the commitments of this administration, in that we're not just focused on youth and young adults with disabilities, but want to ensure that the most underserved communities within the population of youth and young adults with disabilities, so those who are youth of color, those who are in severely under-resourced areas, so living in poverty, that our policies and that our investments are tailored to their needs as well. And I'll perhaps just note one additional thing. You can see I'm excited about all of these things. I could go on forever, but something that we are particularly excited about here is a new proposal in our budget. And it proposed $15 million to support the development of what we call equitable transition models. And that is a goal of providing comprehensive, coordinated services to enable low-income youth with disabilities from that key age range of 16 to 24 to successfully transition to employment. And our goal with this work is to build on past work of the agency, work that we've done in partnership with the Departments of Education, Health and Human Services, and the Social Security Administration, but really continue to build the capacity of states to ensure improved outcomes for these youth. I mean, it's clear that we've lost ground in the last couple of years. Youth with disabilities have particularly lost ground, and without deliberate attention, they will be what we know from research, depressed earnings and depressed lifetime wages as a result of the lost opportunities to have work-based learning experiences, and also because of the learning loss that youth experienced during the peak of the pandemic.
Mhm. Wow, that's outstanding. Really exciting to hear the different areas in the competitive employment areas. Certainly, that idea of how do we design that accessibility? We have to actually design it, right? And then when we do that, our individuals are going to flourish, but so is the company, and helping them see the value that they can bring, that they can gain from that at the company level as well. Let's talk about just maybe a little shift into some of the data, just to get a sense of reminding us, right, of why this is such a critical issue in needing to think about this. So what are some of the key data points that you feel like our business and state leaders need to keep in front and center as they're trying to figure out where they're going to put their priorities in terms of workforce development?
Yeah, that is a great question. And we are lucky enough to have some skilled economists and statisticians on staff here at ODEF, and they work closely with our Bureau of Labor Statistics. For the last about 14 years, they have produced on a monthly and annual basis data related to the experience of people with disabilities in the workforce. And so it's to those numbers that we look to better understand what's happening. And I will say that the data are stark and really are demonstrative of the challenges that youth and young adults with disabilities face. For example, in 2021, the unemployment rate for youth with disabilities ages 16 to 19 was 21%. And for 20 to 24-year-olds, that number was 17%. Perhaps most important there is that was nearly twice the unemployment rate for non-disabled youth. Something else that our agency is particularly attentive to is what the experiences are of youth and young adults right now. And for that, we look to data around mental health. So we've got research from a global sample from last year that showed that depression and anxiety symptoms of youth doubled since the start of the pandemic, with 25% of youth experiencing depressive symptoms and 20% experiencing anxiety symptoms. Those data are so troubling that our Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, issued an advisory not too long ago on youth mental health, highlighting the urgency of the problem. We also know that according to CDC data from earlier this year, about a third of the high school students reported experiencing poor mental health. They reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless. And I think underlying all of these data related to, so the aforementioned data on mental health, is that youth and young adults, and quite frankly adults, have experienced a trauma in the last several years. But in fact, that trauma and the ongoing experience and this disruptions to learning and to work exacerbate what were already incredible gaps that existed between the educational and employment outcomes for youth and young adults with disabilities when compared to their peers without disabilities. So for us, we think about what will it take to close that gap? How do we equip youth and young adults with work-based learning experiences with the opportunities to grow and build their career aspirations and ultimately be set on a pathway where they will be able to thrive.
Mm-hmm. And related to that, finding a sense of purpose and hope, right, for their future as well. Something that I'm really struck with, and I've known it because I've experienced in my work with you all years ago, but as you're talking, you're looking at intersectionality across so many departments and how across the area between health and human services, education, all these different groups, they're all coming together to support what we can do as a nation to improve our outcomes for youth with disabilities. But it really does take that cross-section perspective. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I would add about that is it is so important because we know that youth and young adults will come into contact with multiple systems throughout their transition from secondary school environments, be it high school or other environments, into post-secondary education and employment. They may come into contact with an American Job Center. They may be in contact with vocational rehabilitation as a high school student or during their transition. There are certainly cliffs that exist for youth who may be aging out of the foster care system, or for those who may have been receiving benefits while they were a minor. So it is and has been long apparent to us that at the federal level, if we aren't doing the type of cross systems collaboration, if we're not modeling that cross systems collaboration, and frankly, if we're not working proactively to break down the silos and the very real bureaucratic barriers that exist that keep systems from collaborating, then we're doing that to the detriment of young people, and we're doing it to the detriment of their families who are trying to give them the supports they need to do what you said, to build hopes and dreams and to be able to actualize them.
Now we've got a couple more minutes, and so I want to skip down a little bit. I guess what I'm wondering now is just kind of what are some exciting practices you're seeing with industry and business, what they might be doing to improve kind of the transition outcomes in supporting youth. What are some of the things we should be all looking at and trying to replicate?
Yeah, that is a great example. And so one thing I would note is that we at ODEP, a lot of our work is done in partnership, but we also have investments in technical assistance centers that provide services to individuals, and also into what we call policy development centers that will work directly with states and systems. So one of those is our Center for Advancing Policy on Employment for Youth, or CAPE Youth. We, again, love acronyms sometimes at the federal level. And CAPE Youth really works to improve outcomes, employment outcomes for youth and young adults with disabilities. And the way that it does that is by working with states and in states to surface what are the best practices, what are the examples of innovative use of funding during the peak years of the pandemic, using perhaps American Rescue Plan funding in order to support career and technical education. So we surface what are best practices with the goal of sharing that across peer states and ultimately being able to replicate them. So we do that at a policy level, but we also work very hard to stay aware of like what are model programs for transition and where is the evidence showing us some success in employment outcomes. And an example that is often pointed to is something like the Project Search program, which is a business-led transition model where schools create collaborative partnerships with local large businesses. It can be in hospitals or bank centers or government centers. And the businesses give those youth an opportunity to transition into adult life, an opportunity to learn and earn, and to be in competitive work environments. And they provide supports during that transition, which we've learned and the data show ultimately lead to more successful outcomes. So not just being able to get the job, but being able to retain that employment over time. And there are models like that exist around the country. So that is something that we're excited about, but we're also excited because businesses are coming to us and they're saying we need to find talent And we want to work with you to tap into talent that perhaps heretofore we haven't tapped into, because we were able to meet our needs of the sector, but now we're finding some challenges with that. So I'm excited about how the conversation is shifting around disability employment.
Well, this is fantastic, and we're going to come back to you in a minute. And I think we can kind of continue that dialogue after we chat with Laura Owens about some of this work, especially around the fact that really what you're hitting on is it's not just employment, it's social mobility and basically providing a sense of security for our youth and their future. And so these ideas of redesigning and helping employers see that they can do this work and they can be successful, I think also helps really push the lens that this is something we can all do. So thank you so much for the first comments, and look forward to coming back after each of our presenters just to hear some more comments from you. But with this, I want to just kind of make a transition over. Really, our Coalition for Career Development Center, we're really wanting to bring the innovative, equitable career readiness strategies out to the larger community. And so, learning about the great work that's going on within ODEP, and we'll get the CAPE is at the group, we'll get their resources and get that on our list to make sure we push those out for everyone too, because it sounds really exciting. And that's what we're looking for. But we also have two guests today that are, in their own right, innovators and really strong champions for inclusive practices. And so I want to first start with introducing Laura Owens. Laura is the president of TransCen, as well as a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And again, we're not going to talk about years, but yes, she and I worked there together a while back. TransCen is a national leader in supporting access to employment for individuals with disabilities. And Dr. Owens' work is focusing directly on what we consider our third Coalition for Career Development Center pillar. This is we have 5 career readiness pillars, and this one is really focused on access or increasing equitable access to quality work-based learning. So welcome, Laura. So fun to have you on this conversation. I've been a huge fan of your work for my whole career. So it's great to have a chance to talk with you about this work.
Well, thank you so much. And, now I'm nervous following Secretary Williams, but I'll do my best to respond to your questions. But
well,
yes, we won't talk about years either.
No, well, just tell us a little bit. TransCen has been a leader in this space. And I mean, this is the research showing that if we can help individual youth with disabilities find good employment opportunities while they're in school, the likelihood of their working in their future just skyrockets. And you put this on the map. I mean, your group came up with that evidence base. So you've been really champions for this for so long. And it's been fantastic. So maybe you could just talk about what's going on at TransCen and how you're connecting people with disabilities to the world of work.
Sure, absolutely. So TransCen, we have sort of a national platform. We're lucky enough to have an office in San Francisco, California, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then also Rockville, Maryland. And so we're able to really kind of see across the country what are some strategies that could be beneficial and helpful. In California and in Wisconsin, we do have Project Search. So I'm glad that Secretary Williams talked about that because it's a great model. And so using that model, we have also been looking at apprenticeships and internships within some of the local businesses with the communities that we're working in Milwaukee and California in particular. Really engaging with the business community is a way that we've identified to be able to really tap into the business community and looking at that seamless transition from school to adult life. The law and under IDEA has transition, but there still seems to be a cliff that students drop off. We still don't have that seamless handoff, which I like to say is like running a relay. So you should have that seamless handoff for young adults. And so we've been doing a lot of work with the business community, looking at chambers of commerce and not just being members, but actively engaging We've also looked a lot in working with our school partners. And so we've been going in and we've kind of adopted skills to pay the bills so that we've got it at kind of different levels. So thank you again, Secretary Williams, for pushing out skills to pay the bills. But it really is a good tool that we can go in. We can make those connections and relationships with schools and young adults with disabilities. And then really helping and working with those transition teachers to connect with the business community with us. So we'll partner with those transition teachers to bring them to the chamber meetings and connect with them. So we really look at it as like a tiered process. It's not just one way of doing things, but it's, you know, really looking at the individual, making sure that because what we've found is that, you know, when students are graduating, we start over in the adult world. And so what we've done is we've partnered with a couple of districts where we say, let's work together so that the student has a package that they're leaving with, so that they have several work experiences, a portfolio that then we can really seamlessly move them into the adult world and begin working with them. We've also looked at summer employment opportunities. So we work a lot with the schools in both California, Wisconsin, and Maryland, looking at summer employment, because our goal is that hopefully that summer employment will then lead to employment, permanent employment when they graduate. And then, as Secretary Williams said, really looking at that career advancement, because for us, it's not just about getting a job and that's your job for life. It is getting a job that leads to another job, that leads to another job, that leads to a career that you really want. So another thing that we've been doing a lot lately is community conversations, which is something that we started on a project I worked with a long time ago with Project Summer. And community conversations, particularly in our more rural or suburban areas, have been super beneficial in dealing with some of those barriers that we talk about with transportation and employers not really being engaged. And so bringing the community together to understand that employing youth with disabilities while they're still in school or for the summer is beneficial, not just to the youth, but also to the economies of their communities. And so those community conversations have been super exciting. We've gotten really innovative ideas and from the business community about different kinds of strategies and what they're looking for. And they really help us kind of open our eyes to what the business community is looking at. So those are kind of the things that we're connecting with the schools and the business community. And it's kind of just a mishmash of you know, working with all of the stakeholders, which is super important.
So you mentioned very quickly this thing, skills to pay the bills, right? And I think it's another example, and there are many where the federal government through ODEP has been providing resources. Skill to pay the bills, again, we don't want to talk beers. It's been out a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have it continuing to be such a fantastic resource. But maybe, Laura, just give a little pitch for it, and we'll get a link for everyone. It's access is free, everyone can use it. So it's a phenomenal thing. But maybe just give a little bit of detail about this resource.
Yeah, so we use it kind of as a shell. So skills to pay the bills is kind of a work readiness, or I don't like the term readiness, so I call it a work preparation. So there's a series of lessons on professionalism, teamwork, communication, enthusiasm. And there are videos that ODEP has within the Skills to Pay the Bills curriculum, but we also add to that, and we've adapted it so that we've adapted the curriculum so that it's for students with more complex support needs who might be nonverbal, or we've also adapted it during COVID so that we could do it online. So we did a series of online for school systems, and then we adapted it just to add some key pieces, and we have a little bit of homework that the youth have to do, and it's just a really good I mean, there's lots of good activities, there's lots of good videos, But I think what's nice is that it's kind of a little package that you can use to spearhead. It's like a good outline that you can then say, what else can I add to this? Because it hits on those key pieces of career preparation and work preparation.
Yeah.
That again, employers tell us all the time, they don't have time to teach those skills.
Right.
They can teach the hard skills, but they can't teach the soft skills. And I think that's what I really like about skills to pay the bills.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it when you're talking about, I mean, there is a life skills component to it, but it is about career exploration, self-exploration. So for those of you that are all familiar with the personalized career and academic plan, the individualized learning plan it's been called, these are the activities you can go and pull out in order to design a plan that's going to be really focused on the needs and talent that we see with our individuals with disabilities. So it's definitely something to look at, and we're going to want links to the work you just described on your customization, Laura, because that sounds
I'll be happy
fantastic.
to share it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just,
I mean,
once
really,
you tell
it
us what you've
worked out
got, we
so
want
well.
it. So. What's that?
I mean, it was a lifesaver during COVID, I will say, because we were like, what are we going to do? And so we were able to adapt it and do it online. We had family members sitting alongside their youth with disabilities, and they were learning stuff from it. So it was a really cool experience.
Well, we are running out of time. I do want to hear about the customized work type stuff you're doing. Can you give us like a 1-minute synopsis, and then we'll come back when we have time in the last half hour to get more detail. Yeah. And then I want to move over.
I'm sorry, I talk a lot too.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So we really customize, we follow what we call the lean process, which is a business model where we go into a business. Well, first of all, we get to know the individual, what their passions are, what their strengths are. It's very, very focused on skills, not deficits. So we don't really care so much what their label is or what they can't do. And then we put together a positive personal profile that really looks at what is this person's skills, passions, what do they really enjoy doing. We do Venn diagrams then that kind of help us figure out what kind of industry do we want to connect with, and we do multiple ones because we want to look at what kind of work environment, what kind of job, what kind of skills is needed for different things. And then we go to the business community, and that's our connection. When we go to these chamber events and things like that, we talk about what are their needs, what are they looking for, what types of opportunities, and then we do an informational interview and we identify, who are those surgeons, who are those people who are highly paid, highly skilled, who are doing the jobs that need to be done, but they can't get to their real job, they can't get to the surgery, and so how do we make those connections and develop opportunities, because it's really about job development, not job placement. It's about developing opportunities where that individual will meet a need, will add value to that business. And so we have really found this to be super helpful. And the employers who have customized opportunities for folks are amazed. They're like, wow, I knew we needed something. I just didn't know what it was. So being able to show that people with disabilities, particularly people with more complex support needs, can add value to a business has really opened up the eyes of many of the businesses that we are working with.
That's fantastic. And I think I'm hearing words dignity, I'm hearing self-determination, I'm hearing all these very major pieces that it's part of the advocacy that we need. So thank you. That's fantastic. So Laura, I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I want to ask Secretary Williams if you could, we have a question from Raven Jordan that came in on our Q&A, and I hope we get some more Q&A. So thank you, Raven. What's the department looking at? What are these obstacles for youth with disabilities when they're looking for employment? Is it the stereotyping, other kinds of bias? Is it the curriculum not preparing them? Are there just fewer degrees? The fewer degrees for youth with disabilities and opportunities. What do you see as the big obstacles that are in the way?
Well, frankly, I would say in some ways it's a little bit of all of the above. I mean, there are quite frankly a number of barriers that youth and young adults face when they transition. Something that we focus on as the Department of Labor is ensuring that youth and young adults with disabilities get connected to career pathways, or they get connected to pre-apprenticeship programs or apprenticeship programs that are going to give them the opportunity to build skills. In the case of apprenticeship programs, build skills earn a wage, make
Mhm.
sure those are skills that can be transferable. Perhaps they don't stay in that particular program, but in fact, they transition into something else that is related. And then they have the work-based learning experiences. They have the opportunities to build skills that will ultimately lead to employment. That is one of the things that we're doing and that we're working on. And our goal is addressing an obstacle that we see, which is that youth and young adults with disabilities don't have the same level of opportunities to get those work-based learning experiences that can lead to early career roles. It's also one of the reasons why we developed Skills to Pay the Bills. I was following the chat at the same time. I'd love to hear people talk about Skills to Pay the Bills. I can tell you some years ago, it really was born of a conversation around a table, right? I'm pointing across from where I am right now, where we were talking about what are we hearing from employers about what youth and young adults need in order to be successful. So it's not just those, sometimes we frame them as hard skills or the technical skills that can ultimately lead to employment, but also all soft skills and like communication.
That's
So that is why we built that curriculum and tested it in a number of settings. And I think it tells us something that that it continues to be such a popular and well-used resource. The last thing I will say is, because there was quite a list, and I do think there are multiple obstacles, bias does exist. And it would not be me, we would not be focusing on the things that we do as this administration if we thought that we had moved past a point where bias impacts what happens in the workforce. So I would note, I talked about our executive order on DEIA. It is not our only executive order that really focuses on equity. So throughout the entire Department of Labor and across the entire federal government, we are taking a very hard look at our programs, at our investments, at our policy making, at our data collection and synthesis to better understand what are the impacts of it with an equity explicit lens. And that's not just about race, it's not just about gender, it's also inclusive of disability as well, because we know it has an impact on what happens in the workforce. So we could go on all day, but I'll stop there.
All right. Well, thank you. Wow, that's fantastic. Really exciting. And I love to hear the chat is going. I haven't been able to watch the chat because I'm so focused here, but I'm so excited everybody's getting stuff in. Well, now we get to turn to another one of our Coalition for Career Development Center's pillars, and it's the pillar related to technology. And career tech is such a critical resource and tool that we need to be doing our career advising, career planning. And Lori, I'm so glad Lori Cooney is here from, she's one of our innovative career tech gurus going on in this field and doing amazing work now with the elementary and middle grades. And we are going to introduce Future Quest Island. I know it's been in development for a long time, but it's just, people don't know about it yet. So we're so excited to have you have a chance to share it. Lori's our program director for inclusive education and curriculum design with the Institute for Community Inclusion. We call it ICI at the national level, and it's located at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And ICI has been a major advocate for transition and creating access to higher education for individuals with disabilities. So excited that Massachusetts has adopted their work and made it now a statewide initiative with funding to support individuals with more significant disabilities access to higher ed. So so really excited to have you on, Lori. We're gonna spend about 10 minutes going through and learning about this, but I want to just what's going on when we talk about, we're going to the other side of the spectrum. We're working now with elementary and middle school. And I guess the question is how can we prepare them from that point to really start thinking about their futures beyond high school?
Yeah, right. Thank you for having me today. I'm going to probably piggyback on what everyone else had said. And I'm glad to do that because it makes me validate the work even more. Well, first and foremost, I believe that children and youth with disabilities should be given the same opportunities as their peers. These kids have big dreams for themselves, just like anybody else. Unfortunately, we know through our own research that these students with disabilities in middle school and elementary school and high school are not always held to the same standards and expectations as those without disability. So we also know that with proper support and encouragement from teachers, guidance counselors, specialists, that these students with disabilities will succeed in secondary ed. They'll move on to graduate high school and transition to post-school training programs and have ultimately meaningful employment. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? At the elementary level, though, we can start by supporting children and youth by giving them an ability to identify and communicate some of their skills and interests, their hopes, their dreams, needs for support, you know, being self-advocates, having their short-term and long-term goals. And there's really no better way, I think, to do that than through these career exploration activities, building social emotional skills and developing those personal career and academic plans or ILP plans that can be used in IEP meetings and allow kids to start building these early transition skills. So we really need to support that in the home as well and get these kids to be future ready. Yeah.
You know, something you're talking about, and I know that our Assistant Secretary talked about as well, the word aspirations. And what you're talking about, and we have good research now coming out of OECD, that we have to be building their capacity to aspire. And so our individuals with disabilities have to see themselves in these future opportunities if they're even going to think about it and pursue it. And that has to be happening starting in elementary and even before, to help them see themselves as being able to participate fully in these different areas. So you have a particularly exciting project going on, and really so excited when I first saw it to be able to have you here to talk about it. I know you've got a slide to give us a little picture of what it looks like. So this is kind of like a little taster for people to see what's going on, and then we'll have the links for them to go and investigate further. But why don't you take it away and just tell us what's going on here?
Yeah, sure. Our team developed and implemented Future Quest Island with middle school students back in 2012 under a Federal Office of Special Education Programs grant called Stepping Up to Technology. And then in 2018, we ended up getting another grant for grades 3 through 5 with the same OSEP funding program. And what we did is we created this online accessible, I call it engaging, it's a lot of words, platform that uses the evidence-based possible selves framework to help students think about themselves as a person, as a friend, as a learner, and as a worker through a series of island activities, as you can see on the screen. And so what they do is each activity results in a badge for their possible selves tree where they can envision themselves in the future. But at the end of the game, the students will have learned about over 50 careers in the STEAMS field. So we added the final S, the S at the end of STEAMS for service and trade careers, just because we know not every student will go to college, whether they have a disability or not. We pulled that information from the ONET's My Next Move source. So that's really helpful. But after those students look at those animated videos, they may want to become a radiologist or a YouTuber, which may require, say, technical school or a specialized training program. And we have these career paths built into our curriculum. And to tie in what I had said previously about the expectations to students with disabilities, we made sure that our entire program was inclusive by using the principle of universal design for learning and accessibility.
Wow, that is fantastic. Really exciting. It's just great because you're creating a dynamic, interactive, and again, we talk about self-determination where they're guiding and they're having a choice of who they want to be and how they want to be. And it's just a great thing to see. How can you tell us a little more about universal design for learning and really what is going on in this? Because at the end of the day, while you design this to be accessible and fully functioning specifically for students with disabilities, and you link it with the IEP, it's actually something that all students in these age groups could be using. It's a very powerful system. And I feel like, at the end of the day, that's what the whole point of universal design for learning was. Everyone can access, right? So maybe just give us a little bit more understanding of what this is all about.
Sure. So Universal Design for Learning is a framework that ensures equitable access to the curriculum by considering all users from the beginning. And there's really 3 guiding principles to UDL, and that's multiple means of representation, where material is represented in multiple formats. You can see on my screen on the right, I have different formats of response with images and text, and the students can hear and if they can't read and those kinds of things. The next one is the multiple means of action and expression, which gives the user more than one way to interact. So if they want to use text to speech, if they have input devices, those kinds of things that are built in. And then, sorry about this, I didn't realize that my screen was sharing that.
Okay.
And then the third one is that the multiple means of engagement. So that helps motivate students. So on the game, we have a system where they get coins for everything that they do, rewards. We kind of pay students to do this with a hut that they can buy items, they can buy pets and all sorts of fun things. It gives them some value of earning and some value of spending. So there's some, kind of soft skills built in that as well. We intentionally address areas to meet the needs of all youth when they have either an intellectual disability, a print disability, dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, cognitive hearing impairment. I'm thinking color blindness, even every color was carefully selected so that everybody can use it no matter what. And it's personalized, even that the mentor, who you can see on the screen, kind of walks through and he tells the students, what to do at one time. So if a student's a little slower, if they, need to go back and hear something, they can hear the text, they can get guided. They, it really personalizes that kind of learning. And it works on all devices. So that's the other UDL component. So a lot of systems either work on just an iPad, or they only work in a certain browser, or they have to be a game installed. This works on everything. So that's kind of an intentional design. And then it works with input devices. It even works with Google Translate, so it can translate into a whole bunch of different languages. So if students have ELA as well,
That's
closed
fantastic.
captioning. I could go on and on about what it does.
There's a lot, you could keep going, and we don't have time, unfortunately. But what I want you to do in the last just the 30 seconds, you've had phenomenal feedback. Give us one of your best testimonials coming from a teacher or parent. What are they saying about this?
Well, one of the most incredible things that's come out is that teachers are starting to tie in career language and career options to students who are in their classes. So for example, I had one teacher who was saying that she had a student interested in engineering, but he was not doing so well in math. So she's, teaching a lesson, and she's explaining to the student that if you want to be an engineer, you have to practice your math skills better. And just seeing the tie-in of that and having students creating portfolios where they can lead their transition, lead their IEP meetings, this has been an incredible resource and value for the teachers. And I just want to say one other thing.
We'll have to go quick because we're going to lose
real fast
at the top of the hour.
Yeah. So all of our characters are designed with diversity, equity, inclusion in mind, and also accessibility. So we have characters in many different cultures and disabilities. So, blah, there we go.
And I just want to say, am I correct in saying that the Future Quest Island Explorations is free use right now? It's open?
We're doing a study right now. You don't just log in and use it. You just have to contact me and maybe participate. It is free for that. We have an open educational curriculum as well. That's in Google Classroom, but we're designing a new piece for everybody. So yes.
Thank you, Lori. That's awesome. So a good taster, and I know we got people excited, so it'll be fun. I'm hoping you get lots of feedback as well. So I want to, given our time, I'd like to move over to Amanda Winters. Amanda is with the National Governors Association, as Ava had said at the very beginning, advising on post-secondary and workforce development policies. She's also a huge support for the Coalition for Career Development Center as a founding board member. Amanda, welcome. I don't want to take more time on the intro because I want to give some time for you to chat about what you're seeing in all this, and really governors are interested in all this. And so we'd just love to hear it from your perspective, how it all connects.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to hear all the presenters today. I'm playing two roles, as Scott mentioned, on this call today. Certainly one of a board member for the Coalition for Career Development, but then also as a policy wonk who's helping governors' offices think about this intersectional topic as well as others. And when they're thinking about developing career pathways for an inclusive recovery that Taryn mentioned, that's certainly the goal of, especially as we have very low unemployment numbers. And again, we can dig into those, and some of those numbers were very stark. But thinking about sort of what this work looks like in states, it branches quite a few different agencies in states. The funding can flow through a bunch of different places. So I just wanted to comment on a couple things that I heard from the presentations, and then say just a little bit about what NGA is doing. I popped into the chat a link to work that NGA is doing with ODEP as part of a larger collaborative, and that is the SEED collaborative, which is the State Exchange on Employment and Disability. NGA is one of a number of partners. Our Workforce Development and Economic Policy team has been working with this project since 2017 and has developed quite a few resources in connection to this work. One of the most interesting ones, I think, is the state leading as a hiring partner for people with disabilities. So really thinking about not just saying what could state systems be doing in collaboration with business, but what could they do as a model employer. So certainly check out some of those NGA resources. That team's doing some really great work in making some of those connections. But also thinking about just broadly some of the things that intersect that I was hearing, certainly just career pathway development work that's happening between K-12 and post-secondary pathways, and expanding the economic mobility pathways with inclusiveness in mind. So really thinking about how do we think about those universal design principles that Lori was talking about? How do we build upon the preparation of employers to accept some of these folks that Laura was talking about? Like it's not just preparing students to enter these pathways. If the employers and the employment spaces are not ready to be inclusive of people who have different ability level, different types of abilities that they're bringing to these jobs, and different accessibility concerns, then it's not going to be a positive experience on either end. And so it's really thinking inclusively about how we're approaching this work and not putting all the onus on the student to be the one who's adapting to the workplace. So that's really certainly something that was critical, I think, for me to take away in some of my thinking about how to work across state systems for all of these efforts. But then I just wanted to focus in on CCD, like as a board member, just thinking about this kind of conversation, how does this help us hone in? And I think since this is a sort of a new space for us and thinking about tackling some of these intersectional issues, helping us figure out as an organization how we can contribute to the field. This highlighting and elevating of best practices is certainly one of the key goals of the center. Just thinking about how does this help us to define what's next? What are those research questions? What are those tools or resources that can help create some impact and some opportunity to scale some of the best practices that we're hearing about? So I think the dissemination, but then also the thinking about what could be next. And I think I certainly as a board member, and I'm sure the organizational members would join me in thinking we want the feedback from the field about, we're highlighting here, what else could we be doing? What other connections could we be making? And how could we bring other critical conversations together that bring together federal partners, people from the field, researchers, people to figure out with us how we can help to meet the needs of some of these populations that we're trying to serve with conversations around career development, and how can we make sure that we're making a real difference and not just creating pathways for people who already had lots of pathways, but broadening these openings and making all of the work we're doing more inclusive and opening up more opportunity so that we can expand this for people who have not had access to our education and workforce systems in the way they should have in the past. So I just want to say thank you for the insights that all the experts shared. It's given me a lot to chew on for my work at NGA, as well as a board member. Again, would point you to some of the NGA work around this space to see what our perspective looks like in some of the resources we've developed as a part of the SEED collaborative, and to reach out to folks on that end to learn more if you'd like. So thank you so much, Scott, for the opportunity to reflect and respond.
Well, thank you. And thank you also for your comments. It's amazing to have board members that are all on the same page for what we're trying to do. And it's just a great alignment, and equity is front and center in our work right now. And this is going to be a major element, a major area that we want to continue to build out those resources and disseminate. So Assistant Secretary Williams.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. And just, I know,
thank you for
really
having me.
appreciate this.
I appreciate being here today. I'm sorry I can't stay on longer. Just noting, I dropped my email, my colleague Rob, who comes to us by way of the Department of Education. There are a lot of questions that really get at the intersection of the work that we do with ed. So I dropped our emails in the chat. If you have questions about the resources that were shared, if you want to talk more about VR, transition, anything, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Well, thank you again, and on to your next meetings. But we're going to stay here for those that want to continue the chat. We've got some great stuff in the chat box. And so thank you again, Secretary. That was phenomenal. Really fantastic. So, wow. Thank you, everyone. So do we have any questions, Robin, that have popped up that we need to come back to, or some things maybe some themes in the chat that you've been seeing that we should be diving into?
There was the great question about barriers that folks had raised. And then there was another one earlier about some, and I'm not as familiar, and it's too bad the secretary had to leave, about VR. And it was from Denise Hartman, I believe, Transition Service, Garrett County. I don't know if Denise is still on. She states in the question, she coordinates their work-based learning efforts, and she says the new VR changes in requirement and procedures has negatively impacted their placements and with secondary ed. And so I'm not familiar with some of those changes. So Denise, if Mary Ellen, if we can take Denise off.
Yep. Get some clarification. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about this. I didn't know that there was a barrier in this way that has been created.
And while she's doing that, I just want to give a shout out to the state leaders that are on our call today. It's so exciting to see everybody on here as well. It's been an issue that we've been talking about for a long time. I've got some colleagues from Boston University, Mary Churchill, on as well. So that's fantastic. So are we able to bring, Wall, are you able to bring this person up? We there, maybe?
She is there in chat. We just need to be able to take her off mute. And Wally or Mary Ellen, if we could show Denise Hartman.
Denise Hartman. Yep. Here we go. Thanks, Wally. And then if you've got some other questions that we can get going on here, that would be fantastic too, to get ready.
Well, I want to thank our partners, specifically Amanda, too. We really appreciate the NGA's partnership.
Yeah. All right, Denise, you're on. Can you help give us a little more context and understanding of your question? Sounds like a really important one. You're on mute.
Okay, how about
there you
now?
are. You're perfect.
All right, thanks you guys. Everything's been so nice to hear. My question refers to, like, I do the work-based learning coordination and placements of students with disabilities in our community. I used to have such good program, and you know, we're a very small rural community. But now VR changed their policies where before we could take their allotted time for work-based learning, like we could take the 8 weeks, 20 hours and spread it out over a semester. So we could actually put our kids out for one period even. We paid the transportation, but they could work one period. But now they've changed it. So they only let you do 8 weeks, and it has to be 8 consecutive weeks. And they do allow 20 hours a week, but no kid in school can do 20 hours a week because they have other classes scheduled, unless it's our 18 to 21.
Right. So Denise, which state are you in?
I am in Maryland.
Okay, so I'm wondering if this is a state
By
VR
state thing,
decision,
yeah.
not a federal. It would be something that's happening
I
within
was gonna
state, Laura?
say, yeah, I think that is a state thing, Denise, and we work in Maryland and we don't have those parameters. So
Oh, it's terrible.
No, but she's saying that
but
she's not
I'm just
finding
trying
it
to
in
figure
Maryland.
out. Yeah,
There may be a
because
miscommunication going on somewhere.
I
Yeah,
think,
well,
Maybe
that's
we
what I've
could-
been,
Yeah,
that's what I've been told. And also, like, even I'm so frustrated today because we just got our authorization. I had the kids ready to go at the beginning of the school year.
mhm.
It took VR that long to get to me that say they authorized it. Then, now that this into the holidays, I wanted to see if I could have 5 days, because we have a Thanksgiving break. We have a lot of holidays in the next 8 weeks. So the
Mhm.
kids are only going to, I figured it up. They'll work 29 days when I start them next Wednesday. So it's shorter, it's less accessible. I usually had 8 to 10 kids out. I have 3 this time. So it's really put a negative impact on my
Yeah.
effectiveness
So-
and their learning.
So Denise, what I'm going to suggest is maybe, and we'll have Laura's information, maybe that you could get a quick consult, because I think Laura's, that's the kind of work she would be able to kind of think about, and it might be a communication issue from the local VR place that needs to just get clarified, but that's the kind of stuff that I know Laura's hot
Okay.
on. We don't
Yeah,
want-
that
we
would
don't
be
want
great.
that-
Yeah, because
Okay.
I can't understand why they would do that because it doesn't make any sense. It was
It
working
doesn't.
beautifully.
Yeah, and I do agree with Scott. I think it's a miscommunication and maybe something, especially this happens a lot with VR where counselors interpret things one way and then the state looks at it something different. And it sounds like there's just some confusion there, and I'd be happy to help parse that out with you.
And when I saw VR, just to give you a sense of where my brain was, I went to virtual reality and I was trying to figure out what virtual reality legislation is keeping it away, but that's not what we're talking about. But anyway, that's good. But I did, but Robin, I saw transportation came up. Is there some other topics that transportation is?
Definitely. We're having some great conversation going. There was a question about having issues with transportation. How, maybe Laura can talk a little bit about how you manage that with some of the students that you're moving with employers.
Yeah, so that's a great one. And transportation and benefits are always the two issues that come up as barriers for students. And so that's where our community conversation came in really handy. So Heather, I don't know if you're in a rural community or an urban community, but either way, when we did the community conversation, it was in a pretty rural community, and we had
Very
people
rural, she
from
said.
across.
Mhm.
Very rural. Okay,
Yeah.
so we had people across all sectors. So there was clergy, there was the mayor of the town, there was used car salesmen, there were like all kinds of people in this community conversation. And transportation came up as one of the areas that the school needed guidance and assistance. And so it was very interesting how the employers came up and said, if transportation's an issue, then and I think because they were rural and they were struggling to find employees anyway, the used car salesman, honestly, he's the one who struck me because he was so hilarious. And he said, we're always transporting cars all over the counties, because they went over several counties. And he said, we're happy to work out some sort of arrangement where we transport cars and we transport people. And so he worked out this arrangement with the school district with their used car salesmen as transporters of their students. And they had to go through their risk management and, sign all kinds of MOUs, but it worked out really well. And then the clergy said, well, we only use our church van on Sundays, so why not work out something so that you guys can use our church van Monday through Saturday? And so that was another really unique way of looking at it. We had several older people, I guess grandparents of people, and they said, we're always looking for volunteer stuff to do. And so we would be happy to transport. I think that bringing the community together and saying, these are the struggles we're having. We want our youth to be working, but we don't have ways to get them to and from work. What was really helpful with this was also that, these were these were young adults who are working outside of the school hours. And so transportation for the school wasn't a possibility. And so it was really helpful that, you know, on a Saturday morning, this grandparent would drive this person there and back from work. So I think getting the community involved was a really, really big way. And it might be something helpful for you to do a community conversation.
Well, and I think what you're describing by making it a community conversation is the minute somebody, if it's a single person, it feels overwhelming, right? Well, I don't know how we would do that. But when you have the community there and you think about the stakeholders in the room, someone's going to be able to help get through a lot of those different barriers and challenges. So it becomes a collective we, and we're building our community self-efficacy for managing through these things, right? So yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, Robin, what else do we have?
Yeah, Scott, we have another question from Raven Jordan in the Q&A. And Wally, if you could Raven Jordan and take her off mute, it would be great for her to ask this question. I don't know if you can, but she has quite a bit about, oh, there she is. Let's see if we can get her off mute here.
Hi.
Excellent. Raven, why don't you go ahead and ask? Yes.
Okay, hi. First of all, thank you all for being here and having this really important conversation. In the past, I was an educator and I taught a lot of students with disabilities just in the classroom, and now I work at the Office of Career College and Technical Education at DESE in Massachusetts. And so my question was, earlier it was said that the several departments who had representatives present on this call are focusing on DEIA with a focus on equitable accessibility. But my wondering is, how is that translating to actual employers across the nation, and what's being done to help industry partners be able to equitably employ people with disabilities? And I think a big part of that is, as far as the application and interview process goes for people with disabilities, how are we making and helping employers themselves make that more equitable and accessible for these youth and adults with disabilities?
That's fantastic. And Laura, I know you probably have some ideas on that. I think what comes to mind for me is Disability In, as kind of a national organization that's certifying businesses for their inclusion practices, which is fantastic. And there are companies that are really invested in making it, and the only letter that's missing in our DEIA is the letter B for belonging. And so these are employers that are also helping all of their individuals feel like they belong within their places of work as well. So that's another big piece. But Laura, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we again engage a lot with our chambers, our local chambers of commerce. And so in one of our projects, we're working in Northern Illinois, and we are looking at a school apprenticeship program with the local chamber of commerce, where the local chamber of commerce is promoting and supporting and educating their members on DEIA initiatives. And then we're providing that training and technical assistance. And so we're going in and doing newsletters and showing little snippets of videos that from employers who are implementing. I think Scott's point about Disability In is really important. I think it's a matter of, and then when we go in and customize employment opportunities, we're focusing on DEIA and, looking at how do we make this accessible across the board. And so many times when we go in and we provide support for people on the job, it makes it easier for everybody else. And so it kind of just, it's really about educating. It's really about getting in there and rolling up your sleeves with the business and saying, we are here together. We are partners together to help you, make sure that your workplace is accessible, to make sure that you have economic vitality by hiring individuals with disabilities. And you're not there doing it alone, and we've got to work together. So I think really we participate a lot in our local chambers. And I think that's really been super successful and meaningful for them, because then they don't look at it. We're not coming to them with an ask right away. We're coming to them with, tell us about you, tell us about what you're working on, tell us about what's happening in your business. And then you develop that partnership, and then you can start talking about the DEIA initiatives and how disability is part of their DEIA initiatives.
Right. And I want to add to that. It was a story I didn't get a chance to bring into our last session, but I was so glad Amanda brought up the SEED, which is the ODEP's kind of their advocacy arm to get policy and help people see great stuff that's happening. And they're also working with policymakers. And so I had the privilege of showing up to Wisconsin around a project search conversation that came out in one of the conversations. And what was amazing was to hear this engineer, this employer who's an engineer, get up and talk about how he doesn't consider these students individuals with disabilities, but individuals with special talents. And as an engineer, their job is to figure out how to design an opportunity for them to showcase those talents. And they ended up hiring all 5 of the students or young adults that they were working with, because they helped support not only the ecology of the whole business, everyone stood up stronger, but it was helping their bottom line in so many ways. And this idea that we need to champion those individuals, right? We need not only get into the chambers and build it out, but these are the individuals that are going to help explain to the other businesses why they should be involved, the value it has, and everything else. So it's finding some of these champions, and they're out there, right, that really do want to be part of this and are going to have the charisma and some impact in terms of getting other businesses involved. So Raven, fantastic question, and it's just part of the work that we have to keep doing. All right. Anything else we got on there, Robin? Thank you, Amanda, for all the resources you're throwing down here. This is great. We will be collecting those as well. Any other stuff there? All right. Well, what about from our crew? I love the Future Quest. Really exciting. That kind of dynamic IT is just a fantastic resource that I think I'm hoping to see learn more about and get out there. And so really excited to see that we're coming forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other things?
Yeah, I do too. I think it's super cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to do it. See what my career should be.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. But I just think
got
think
so many great links that were shared. So I'm just capturing all those. We'll definitely share out the links with the recording, etc. I don't want anyone who's still on the call to feel like you're missing anything, especially if you joined us late.
Yeah, we'll have everything out. And that's, as Amanda had said, that, you know, part of our CCD Center, we're seeing ourselves as the place you should be able to come to get resources that it's from everywhere on these important topics. And I can even announce we're doing a launch this month of Career Readiness GPS. And that's going to be our kind of putting together things like this that we can paste out around resources and resource little toolkits, but it'll eventually become an interactive online searchable set of resources. So we'll be adding all of these to our list, and hopefully we'll be the place where every organization is sending us their great materials so people can, they don't have to reinvent anything. We can continue building off of each other's great work. Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we've got kind of a nice lull, unless there's any other comments. Ava, did you want to say anything at the end here? I know we had a very quick ending, so we didn't get to hear from you right when before Taryn got off, but could you give us an end to this whole thing?
Yes, thank you so much to everyone. This was so informational and insightful. Thank you to all of you that took time to join us virtually, including members of our State Leaders Network. Assistant Secretary Williams dropped bombs of knowledge, right? And so did our esteemed panelists. Laura, Owens, we appreciate your insight on how to better support all people, including those with disabilities, develop durable skills to pay the bills. Thank you for touching upon what I'm now thinking of as a universal design for working environments. Laura Cooney, thanks for sharing Future Island with us and the very thoughtful way you and your team developed the tool. Amanda Winters, our beloved CCD board member, thank you for providing such a great synopsis and reflection from your landscape view, working with governors and sharing information about the SEED initiative, the State Exchange on Employment and Disability. And I also want to give a shout out to our staff member, Robin Kroyer-Kubitschek, who you met here and worked behind the scenes tirelessly to manage the successful policy forum. And again, we owe gratitude to our sponsors, American Student Assistant and the Education Strategies Group. This session is recorded and will be posted on our events page. And we are looking forward to seeing you all soon in our next policy forum.
All right. Do we have a date for that? I think we have December.
December 5th. We'll
Okay.
send more information shortly. We're very excited about that. We're finalizing 1 or 2 more speakers and we'll be ready to promote. It will
And-
definitely be on Career Pathways.
And we have the Assistant Secretary of Education, Luke Ryan, will be our guest. I'm so excited that we could have 2 policy forums in a row with some great innovative thinkers and people that have had great history in the work they've done. And, you know, Luke's work at Delaware is a national model around career pathways. And so to have a chance to have him come in, and we've got some really exciting co-presenters coming in, that'll be fun too. So just to give you a taste of getting ready for December. All right. Yes, Terry, we know you love Luke. We all do. Terry Lawler, from one of our state leaders from Delaware. All right. Okay, everybody, thank you. And we'll sign off and we'll send everything out. We'll make sure we get an email out with all this stuff for you all, but really appreciate your engagement and being here today.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well,